Welcome to the Explainer. So let's dive right in, because today we're cracking open the file on literally the ultimate historical cold case. I'm talking about a mystery that has completely baffled the smartest minds in history for 6 long centuries. Think of this analysis as our very own detective's murder board. We're going to lay out all the evidence and look at it from a totally mind-bending new angle. Now, if you've never heard of this mystery before, hey, don't worry about it. We're starting right from square one. But I gotta warn you, the clues we're about to look at together, they might just turn everything you thought you knew about history, language, and secret codes completely upside down. Okay, take a really close look at Exhibit A here. I'm going to ask you point blank, what exactly do you see in this bizarre piece of evidence? I mean, sure, it looks like old, faded ink on parchment. Maybe it's a super stylized letter H, or, I don't know, perhaps some strange looping cursive numbers, like a 4, a 0, and an 8. It's weird. It twists back on itself, and honestly, it just feels entirely alien to modern eyes. You know, for generations, investigators have stared at this exact shape, analyzing literally every single curve, desperately trying to force it to make sense. Well, what you were just looking at is actually the very first entry from an infamous 600-year-old document known to history as the Voynich Manuscript, or if we're being official, MS 408. Guys, this manuscript is truly the holy grail of historical mysteries. It's this thick, cryptic book made of delicate vellum, and it is filled top to bottom with bizarre drawings and endless strings of strange, undecipherable characters, exactly like the one we just saw. For hundreds of years, it's just sat, locked away, a literal cold case stubbornly refusing to give up its secrets to anyone who dares to open its ancient pages. And let me tell you, some truly brilliant detectives have tried to crack this case. We're talking top-tier scientists, brilliant military cryptographers, world-renowned linguists. They all tackled MS-408, and, well, they all hit a massive, frustrating dead end. Why did they all fail? Because, like any classic investigation gone wrong, they might have been following a false trail from day one. You see, every single one of them operated under the exact same foundational assumption. They wholeheartedly believed they were looking at a traditional written language. They searched for syntax, grammar, repeating alphabets, phonetic patterns, the whole shebang. But what if that core assumption was actually their fatal flaw? So, here's the absolute game changer. What if it's not a language at all? Just sit with that for a second. What if all those brilliant code breakers were trying to read a book that wasn't actually meant to be read in the way you and I understand reading? What if the secret to MS-408 requires us to completely stop thinking like traditional linguists and start thinking entirely outside the box? Well, buckle up, because our investigation is about to take a massive twist. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive perspective shift we're analyzing today. Compare our cryptic, looping Exhibit A with a vivid, detailed anatomical sketch of a plant. The theory we're unpacking today suggests that these strange, alien characters are actually hiding in plain sight. They aren't abstract letters in some forgotten alphabet. They're actual physical botanical anatomy illustrations. It's essentially a completely visual code. Let's actually move to the specifics and see how this builds step by step. We're going to decode the anatomy of this symbol together. Notice how perfectly it maps to the physical plant. That top left loop of the black and white symbol, that corresponds directly to the bright yellow flower. The tall, straight vertical line, that's obviously the main thorny green stem of the plant. And that sweeping curve nestled right next to it perfectly mimics the shape and placement of the broad green leaf. So, we're looking at a highly stylized, incredibly clever anatomical sketch of a botanical specimen. But wait, what about the bottom section of the symbol? That brings us down to the roots. And the roots, well, this is where they become words. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this structural breakdown completely reframes the bottom half of the symbol. If the top half represents the physical flower, leaf, and stem of the plant, then the bottom half, those sprawling, twisting lines at the very base, represent the root system. But according to this groundbreaking theory, these aren't just arbitrary, decorative squiggles drawn by some careless medieval artist. No, these roots are actually functioning as words. They are carrying the specific data, the actual hidden message of the manuscript. Here is where the true crime forensic analysis really pays off. This theory posits that these intricate root shapes are actually cleverly disguised medieval Latin abbreviations. Think about it. Back in the Middle Ages, scribes constantly used shorthand and complex abbreviations to save precious parchment and ink, right? So what we see twisted into the roots of these plant drawings are supposedly these exact Latin shorthand codes. And their purpose? to tell the medieval reader exactly how to use the specific botanical specimen shown above it. Under this theory, MS-408 is not some storybook or a dark magical cipher. It's a highly compressed, visually integrated medical or botanical manual. So let's lay the evidence out objectively to see where we currently stand. For centuries, the traditional linguistic search has argued that the Voynich Manuscript contains a lost spoken language or maybe a highly complex military-style cipher, relying heavily on statistical analysis of character frequencies. On the flip side, we have this new botanical interpretation. This theory argues that the text is primarily visual and structural, using detailed plant anatomy cleverly combined with medieval Latin shorthand to convey practical, real-world instructions. Both theories are just incredibly fascinating. And honestly, as investigators in this explainer, our job isn't to declare a definitive winner. We're simply here to examine the compelling, thought-provoking evidence each side brings to the table. So, I want to hand the magnifying glass over to you. Based on the evidence we've just laid out on the board, how do you process this? Is MS-408 a language in the traditional sense, just waiting for the right cryptographic key to unlock its alphabet? Is it a purely visual text, like a brilliant fusion of art and medieval shorthand, or is it somehow both at the exact same time? A hybrid code that literally requires us to be both expert linguists and master botanists to finally crack the case? It really challenges our very definition of what a book or a manuscript even is. We've reached the end of today's file, but trust me, this 600-year-old cold case is far from closed. The evidence is right there in front of you, hiding in plain sight in the faded ink and ancient parchment of the Voynich Manuscript. I want you to think back to that very first symbol we looked at together. Now that you've seen the hidden Latin roots, look at this symbol one more time and tell me, what do you see? Keep questioning the obvious, keep analyzing the evidence, and I'll see you in the next explainer.